Get started. It is about 30 seconds till, so we'll pray and get rolling. Father, we thank you for another opportunity to gather around your word, a very interesting, different word than what we learn in the Gospels. This now prophetic, purely prophetic, a lot of symbolism and interpretation. So, Father, just help us to enjoy, as we are told in the first chapter of the book of Revelation, that we would be blessed if we read and hear this book. It's in the name of Jesus we ask this. Amen. What I decided to do this week, make sure we're good. Yeah. All right, good. As always, I always start out real quick with a brief overview of what we're looking at in the book of Revelation, that period of 7 years left over from Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9. And that 7-year period is, these are the non-negotiables right here. This is what we know to be straight out of the scripture. That period is broken up into two parts, of which the second part is called the Great Tribulation. These are somewhat negotiable. These are some of the key highlights in the book of Revelation, and I do like the Christmas tree analogy because you have the basic structure, which is something just about everybody from our perspective agrees on, and then how you put the ornaments, something could be a little bit more discussed, but Antichrist entering the temple appears to be the midpoint, and for sure the bowl judgments are definitely the end of that time period. Other things are, you're free to move them as you wish. Just be prepared to defend it when you do. You have a reason for why you do that. We've gone through that. So we started last week in chapter 13. I want to finish this out, and we're going to do a lot of review because there were a lot of questions over chapter 13, where we are in a symbolic way learning about an individual that the Bible calls the Antichrist. And it's the same author of the book of Revelation that mentions that name in his epistles. And here we're talking about the Antichrist. And here anybody can be an Antichrist that denies the Father and the Son. In other words, in a spirit type sense. But the Antichrist that we're talking about now is this verse right here, is an individual. And going back to Daniel chapter 7, we read in Revelation 13, John sees a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. We believe this is the same beast that Daniel saw in his vision. And the 10 horns are mentioned here. The 7 heads are not mentioned by Daniel. That's additional revelation in the book of Revelation. And we're also told in the book of Revelation chapter 17 that those 10 horns are 10 kings who've received no kingdom as yet, but receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. And so this is why we believe at the end of history there's going to be a revival of some type of an empire similar to ancient Rome. And Daniel actually saw this in chapter 2. Actually, it was Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel interprets. And those 10 horns are analogous to the 10 toes of the statue. Again, so we believe sometime in the future, a 10-nation confederacy of some type led by 10 different leaders of that confederacy, somewhat resembling the old Roman Empire, will come. And a lot of people speculate that could be the European Union. Don't know for sure, but that's on the docket. Now, this was where it got a little interesting, and we're going to spend some time on this again. In interpreting the beast itself in chapter 17, we're told that the 7 heads are 7 kings. And at the time of the writing of the book of Revelation, 5 of those kings had come and gone already. So in around 96 AD, 5 of the heads of the 7 heads are gone. And so if you were to think of, again, this is, who knows what it actually looked like in the vision, but this is just something I came up with. That would mean at this particular time period, 7 of the heads of the beast are there. 5 are now gone at that time period. And some theologians, and I don't get why they do this, interpret this as those 5 heads representing the 5 major world empires that had come and gone up until that time period. And then this head would be ancient Rome, and then that last head with the 10 horns would represent this revived Roman Empire under the Antichrist. But I think the better way to interpret that, and I think this is more of the historic way, is that beast represents all of historic Rome. Beginning in 146 BC and extending to the future. And when it talks about the 7 heads, they're dual interpretation. Not only are they kings, but they're 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And that identifies this beast as being the city of Rome. And this was just an example. It's known as the city of 7 hills. Here is a coin from that time period with the goddess Roma on here, sitting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hills. Anybody in the first century reading that would have interpreted this as it also represented Rome. Yeah. I love this. So Rex says, isn't it say that the Antichrist is of the 7? You are about to see that interpretation. That was from last week. So the way I would say the better way to interpret this is in the Roman Empire, 5 wicked leaders that were antichrists had come and gone up until that point. So it says 5 have fallen and then 1 is. So that would mean, as John is writing Revelation, whoever was in power at that time is the next head. And that would put a fellow named Domitian, most likely, who was very wicked. He hated Christians. In fact, Domitian is the emperor that's in power when Jesus says to the church in Smyrna in chapter 2, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison 10 days, right? That would have been the Roman Empire, emperor behind that. So he would have been that head. And maybe we know Caligula and Nero were very wicked people. So maybe 2 of those heads represent them, and then we just don't know who the other 3 would be. But I think that's the better interpretation. Now, also, the other has not yet come. So you have a head on the beast, the 6th head, which is Domitian, and there's one who has not yet come. That's going to be the Antichrist, the final head, that kingdom. All right. So this is your question, Rex. This is an interesting passage, and it can get you a lot of things to think about. Now we have the beast that was and is not, is himself also the 8th. Suddenly there's an 8th king. But that 8th king is of the 7 and is going to perdition. So they typically interpret this particular beast here as being Satan himself. Now, let's see. Again, none of these interpretations are squeaky clean where it's very easy. You're always going to have some loose ends and a wiggle room, but this is the one I've settled on. And again, if somebody were to argue one that was scripturally sound different, I would say fine, but this one is fairly scripturally sound. We see the passages in Revelation 13 speaking about this individual. And it mentions the mortal wound, wounded by the sword. And it says here, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. So some have hypothesized that this final world leader in a very Kennedy-style assassination, something like that, is taken out. And it's obvious he should be dead. He's got a mortal head wound. So we now have him missing. Then you have this. Now again, this gets pretty cool stuff here. At the same time, in the middle of this 7-year period, we're told in Revelation 12 that there is a war in heaven, and Satan gets into a battle with Michael the archangel, who protects Israel. And it says that the dragon fights and his angels fought, and they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon, was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast with him. At this point, in the midpoint of that 7-year period, Satan, and I like, again, if you've ever worked in a factory, Sometimes they will give you a card that allows you to swipe the lock on the door to go to the office. So you can think of Satan having the ability to go see the boss. And at this point, he is shut out of heaven permanently, can no longer go before the throne to accuse the brethren. And again, a war has taken place, and they're kicked out. And it says, with his angels with him, and then we're told this, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, because you don't have to see him anymore. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, and that's critical. He knows that he has a short time. The hourglass has been tipped. He knows this. So one of the ways this is hypothesized, Satan himself now is cast out of heaven. And when we think of this verse here, when Judas went to betray Jesus, Satan entered him. So what some will think of is that here's how the eighth, Satan, becomes of the seven. He indwells the man, like Judas was indwelt by him. And then what you have is a demonically possessed world leader that hates God. This is a hypothesis. We would say it's the middle. Now, this would explain a few things, all right? And this verse here, it's tintillating. We don't know if this factors into this or not, but it just goes to show you Satan might want to do weird things with dead bodies. Because we're told in Jude that Michael the archangel was contending with the devil when he disputed about the body of Moses. So some have asked the question, what would Satan be arguing with Michael about the body of Moses? Speculation. What if Satan wanted to reanimate it and use it to deceive Israel? Don't know. That's a big speculation. But some will use that as in this whole argument that maybe when this man receives the mortal head wound, he takes the body and now he's now indwelling. So again, that's just an interesting passage. But this might answer a question, because we're told that this person, the Antichrist, is going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And a lot of people will interpret that he is a friend of Israel at that time. He signs an agreement that offers Israel protection. But then in the middle of that point is when he brings an end to sacrifice and offering. So again, this model then might explain why he turns on them. Because now he's under the control of Satan directly, and he hates God's plan, and now he goes against Israel. Again, this is a model. It's not fact, but it is a model we can discuss. And then we're told in 2 Thessalonians 2, this is what's going to happen in that midpoint. It says there will be a falling away first, and then the man of sin will be revealed, the son of perdition, and this is what he's going to do. He opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. This model kind of gives you something to work with on that. Suddenly, this guy now, when he revives from his mortal wound, is anti-Israel, hates Christians, hates the Lord, and he goes in, and what has Satan always wanted? Worship. And he gets his worship here. It's a model. And again, where Jesus was accused of blasphemy, and in the biblical definition, that is you being a man, make yourself God. That's blasphemy. So Satan, in the form of the Antichrist, is committing blasphemy here. He's now claiming he himself is God. And then Jesus, again, just a further confirmation. Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand, and that is the beginning of the Great Tribulation. So it's an interesting model. It's just an interesting model for discussion. Don't know. Maybe someday, we'll all be sitting in heaven and we can all discuss, hey, you were dead wrong, Dudek. I'm saying this is the one. It is a model. I think it fits the text pretty good. Let me see where we are here now. All right. We also met in chapter 13 an individual called the false prophet. The false prophet. Now, if you turn to Revelation 13, verse 11, he's called something different here in chapter 13. Later chapters, he's called the false prophet. So 13:11, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb. So think about that. His appearance is what? Is his appearance fearsome and nasty like the beast? Two horns like a, but he spoke like a dragon. Going to look good, speak wicked. And we're told he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Think about that. In that passage I just read, who is demanding the worship? Is it the Antichrist himself? It's this other guy. It's the false prophet, or this other beast. We're also told in verse 13, this individual, he performs great signs so that even makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. Very Old Now this is interesting because the Old Testament prophets of Baal couldn't do that. Remember, they were the ones that made to look like fools in front of Elijah. So exactly what this means, or is he given powers that were not prior available before? It suggests something like that. He's able to perform. But remember this, in 2 Thessalonians 2, it says this. I want to read the passage here real quick. Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. All right. All right. So, 2 Thessalonians 2, after the passage about the Antichrist sitting in the temple calling himself God, and it goes on to say in verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. All right, so there's some kind of an indication there of false miracles. In any case, he's going to be able to wow people with whatever he's able to do. And it says in verse 14, he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. So I had used the example last week. By the way, so here's the other passages that call him the false prophet. So you were talking, again, we're seeing a lot of symbolic language. I saw 3 unclean spirits that they look like frogs. You got me. Coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So I don't know whether that means a false demon came out of the mouth of each one. And again, remember, we're looking at symbolism here. Now, Rex is the dragon, the beast. You're going to find that there's an interchangeability here, where sometimes the beast is the kingdom, or it's the man, or it's the power behind it, but they're interchangeable at this point. I know Rex, Ross, you had like a satanic trinity, some folks would say. Again, talking about this fellow is the one that's directing people toward the Antichrist. And one of the things that we'll notice here is the beast itself, the beast kingdom in Revelation 13:1, rises out of the sea. And we're told in Revelation 17, the waters or that sea are where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. The general idea here is that the waters or the oceans or the seas represent the Gentiles, whereas when it says that this other beast, the false prophet, comes up out of the earth, that the earth would probably represent Israel versus the Gentiles. So some folks, based on that, and again, I'm not saying this is absolute fact, I'm just telling you what people believe, would say that the false prophet or this other beast is a Jewish false prophet, which would be kind of interesting because he'd be a turncoat on his own people. We've seen that throughout history. So I had likened him to, if you know anything about Nazi history, Joseph Goebbels, or Goebbels as you would say it, was basically Hitler's cheerleader. He was the one that pointed everybody to Hitler. I'm not going to show the video again, but there was a history video clearly showed Hitler was viewed as just a very good politician, and it was this guy that convinced the German people he was some kind of a superstar. And so there's going to be some similarities here between the two. Now, I'm going to stop right here for a minute. Yeah. No, he wasn't Jewish, but I'm saying the Antichrist. Hitler did not come on his own authority per se. This was the guy that pumped him up. Made everybody think he was the end all. Wouldn't surprise me though, because they say that Hitler had a little Jewish blood in there. Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, something like that. So, all right. Then we get into this part of it. Verse 14, about this image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived, and he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So this gets into some interesting things. I had showed you a clip of a CGI discussion with a well, here it is. Very realistic CGI. This conversation is very real. But this is
For starters, what should I call you?
I'm Chloe. And you, what's your name?
Oh, John. My name is John.
Delighted to meet you, John.
Could you tell us a little about yourself and what you can do, Chloe?
Of course. I'm the first personal assistant built by CyberLife. I take care of most everyday tasks like cooking, housework, or managing your appointments, for example.
And I understand you're the first android to have passed the Turing test. Could you tell us a little more about that?
I really didn't do much, I just spoke with a few humans to see if they could tell the difference between me and a real person. It was a really interesting experience.
But this is the first time in history that man has created a machine more intelligent than himself. I gather your brain can perform several billion operations per second. Is that right?
Absolutely. But I only exist thanks to the intelligence of the humans who designed me. And, they have something I could never have.
Really? And what's that?
A soul.
Now you think about that. This is the thing that's really alarming. When they keep talking about how scared we are of AI, it's because of who's programming them, right? If you program it to hate the human race, what do you expect when it talks about annihilating the human race? If you program it to believe in global warming based on the principles of a certain group of scientists, there's no surprise it's going to come out giving you answers in that area, and also giving advice like you need to get rid of humans in order to save the earth. People don't get that. These things are not free agents. They're programmed to go a certain way. But I want you to think about this. What if you could take that kind of intelligence, and I showed this last week, and put it into something like this?
77 years ago.
Now that's the real Lincoln thing at the Hall of Presidents.
A new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now you think about that. So the idea is after the Antichrist comes to power, the thought process that seems to come out of the text is the false prophet is going to instruct the building or creation of something like that then stays in the temple, and it is going to give direction. This was impossible at the time of the writing of this. So again, this is a hypothesis, so I don't want anyone saying I've taught this as fact. It is a hypothesis people come up with. Is it a reasonable speculation? Yes. So you always have to be careful to say you use your terminology right. There are speculations and there are reasonable speculations, okay? Is it based on the text of the scripture enough to where it's reasonable? Everybody kind of get that idea? Like if I told you that Jesus rode a Schwinn bicycle, that's a speculation. Is it reasonable? Well, he's God. He could have created one, right? But I'm saying you wouldn't have a text to support that. So it is one of the things, when you get into this type of interpretation, be aware of speculation, reasonable speculation based on the text. All right, so we now have the rise of the man through the kingdom. He's claiming himself to be deity. He's got a sidekick that's telling people, worship this dude. And this is the one everybody wants to discuss. Ready? Here we go. Now, he causes all, both small and great. This is verse 16. Free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. We're going to stop right there. That is a first century, event that could take place in the first century, right? No question. You could tattoo people. But this is talking about the whole world now. Now, this was one of the things that converted me from being a prophomaniac, was all the junk about the mark of the beast. I saw so much stupid stuff over the year, of which I taught it myself. So this is why I got to be glad that Christ forgives sins, because I am in big trouble. But over the years, the different ideas about the mark of the beast and what it is and how it works have come and gone. And then you start learning, I don't want to hear anymore, because it's a very simple thing, all right? In fact, when we were in our college and career group in New Jersey, no joke, and we were going to a church, it was becoming a mega church then. Now it is a mega church, but one of the visiting youth pastors they had there had gotten a letter, and they read this to our group. And it was a letter that was supposed to have been sent out to people who are on Social Security. This was 1983. And the letter said that starting with next month's check, you will not be able to cash it without the mark on your right hand or your forehead. And the story behind it is the government accidentally sent it out a year early, that the mark was coming in 1984, and stupid me, I used it in my teaching. All right, now, let's get into some possible, reasonable explanations now. First of all, you've heard for years about this idea of a chip, right? We keep hearing about the idea of a chip under the skin. I took this from, right here, DW News, and I got this off the Nightly News, right here, NBC. This is not some crazy right-wing prophecy ministry, okay? Prepare yourself if you haven't seen this. This is actually happening. It's been happening now for several years. All right, Nightly News, here we go.
When Elias Brotberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID, and he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
You like to touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, a grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Yeah, it's all in chip, so I use it like to get around the building.
Buy snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's buy some snacks.
Exactly.
So I can't open it.
No.
Okay.
So what I need to do is I need to first blip my chip, and it will log me in, and from there I get access to the fridge.
Popular TV shows like Black Mirror have imagined chips as part of a dystopian future.
Install in-grain procedure with local anesthetic and you're good to go.
In Sweden, the microchips are already here.
The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards.
Which have made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden.
No cash.
At this tech fair, a chipping event for those on the cutting edge, merging their hands with this new technology.
I thought it would be fun, right?
The process is simple and swift. A pinch of the skin, and in a matter of seconds, the chip is inserted. The transformation is complete. As for the pain,
I barely felt it.
but even in this nation of early adopters, not everyone is racing to get chipped.
Feel less human. I will feel like a robot.
I think, it's so much more data can go into this, when it's in your body.
There's no central registry tracking how many people are chipped, but biohacker Hannes Wellblood estimates between 5 and 10,000.
In the future, do you think everyone is going to be chipped?
I think it will be voluntary, but I am certainly convinced that millions of people will find it very, very valuable to have a smart device under their skin.
Human microchipping may be our future, but in Sweden, it's already reality. Sarah Harmon, NBC News, Stockholm.
What do you think? Yes, it's been going on for 5 years. Yeah, 5 years has been going on. Now, here's the quick question for my prophet maniac. Is that the mark of the beast? No, not at all. In fact, that might not even have anything to do with the mark of the beast. It could. It definitely plays into a totalitarian style of leadership. There's no question about it. But it doesn't have to. That does not. And this is one of the problems that I see with prophomaniacs. I call them prophomaniacs, right? Teaching is they start claiming things as fact. That very well would play itself into a totalitarian system. I don't like it. I wouldn't want it. Because think about this, especially now with the COVID passports. You can put that in there too. If you can't, get yourself through a certain door, you're locked out. So this would play itself into a system like that very well. Oh yeah, but they're doing that with animals, your pets now. But just so you know, that is not the mark of the beast. So you have people today running around, it's the mark of the beast. It is not the mark of the beast. It is not. It would be a great supplement with it. There's no doubt about it. But I just get very edgy now making statements that may or may not be true. And that is definitely, to me, if you love freedom, that's not a good thing. A potential foreshadowing. A potential. Because you do not have to have that in order to have this system. Think about Nazi Germany, World War II. There's your tattoo. Jewish people. There were millions of them had those put on their arms. A lot of them died. But a tattoo will still work. So, same thing. And remember this. When you think, and I'm not saying it's not related. I'm just saying it's not a definite. It plays into that system. But I want you to remember this. We think of the world the way it exists today. All right? Think how the world is today. When you look at the book of Revelation, we're told that just in the sealed judgments alone, and this is at the beginning of that 7-year period, 1/4 of the earth is killed through war and famine. 1/4. Now think about what the world would look like now if we had a war a year ago, all right, and 1/4 of the world's population is killed in a massive war. It's not going to look like it does today. Your supply chains are affected. Think about this. Supply chains, especially as it deals with fuel and things along that line. And again, where the 1/4 of the earth is affected, I don't know. Is it in one area or is it spread out over the whole earth? The point being is that it's not going to be this squeaky clean world we see today with people just walking around normally with a chip. It's going to be a world that's very much in chaos, probably with anarchy, probably with a lot of martial law. These are all reasonable speculations, a lot of evil taking place. And it's going to take that's how a totalitarian government takes over. Yeah, Carrie. Could COVID have, one thing COVID did, and this, again, I got to be careful on this, right? COVID just set the stage for, I think, the gullibility of people to follow orders that don't make sense. That's my opinion. There were some good things in there, and there were some silly things in there. If I got into a lot of Facebook debates, one of the things I was trained in college is you can't cure the common cold. We know that. If you can go back to 2018, you can still find articles on the internet today as to why they never developed a vaccine for the common cold. It morphs too frequently. One of the arguments that people that had any education all knew that you're going to be taking boosters forever on this. Why? Because the coronavirus is a common cold virus. It's in the family. What are you up to? 5 or 6 boosters already? And you can still catch it and transmit it? I don't argue the case anymore. This is no longer an argument with me. I don't care what other people, it's no longer an argument. If you want to keep getting the boosters, it's fine. The fact that you're just going to get them forever. And you got me on my hot button, I'm off. But I got into too many debates on that. I was getting really tired of it. It's not a common cold virus. Dude, look on your can of Lysol. The corona has been on there for a decade. It's been there. Yeah. No, I got into, it's amazing. Basic sanitation hygiene issues that were put in place 50 years ago all played into this. Wash your hands, right? Yeah. Wash your hands. coughing in, the thing that used to kill me. I stood at, what was that place down in D&W? I was down in St. Joe, and I was watching one of the young people there. It was 90 degrees out, and they had to wear the masks, and this is what I saw. And again, remember, I look at it as my degree was in public health. It was to teach people how to not get sick, that stuff. And I'm sitting there watching this gal as she has her plate glass, and she's passing your groceries through, all right? And she's doing this every 3 seconds. They were never meant for the general public, which means every time you squeeze and pinch the mask, which is porous, whatever was in it is now on your fingers, everything. And then the person at the end, some poor kid that was never meant to go out 90 degrees, 70 degrees, 90 degrees, 70 degrees. And this is happening all day. Now you're going to tell me that's beneficial. No. You're spreading germs with it. Nobody wanted to get that because if they were being told by the leaders that it was good. This is common sense.
Besides the quarter of the earth during that time that's going to be taken away, us Christians that are here on the earth still will be gone before the cosmos.
It could be. Now, you're talking about a pre-tribulation rapture. If that's true, that is one of two views that I think are legitimate. If that's not true, if the rapture takes place more toward the middle, we're still going through a lot of it. Either way, it's going to be hell on earth. It's not going to be anything pleasant. So it's going to be a different culture. Now, you're seeing all these nice people walking. It's not going to be like that. All I can tell you is I was in New Jersey. I was speaking at a church the Sunday that Hurricane Sandy came in on Monday. And I saw this with my own eyes. Got up in the morning. That night it sounded like a 747 was on the roof. And what's interesting, my mom had the new windows. The rain was hitting those windows so hard it still was squeezing in around the edges. We had to put towels over there. So in the morning, all of the areas that had above ground wires, the power was out. So there were certain sides of the street that had below ground electric and their power was on. And there were other areas that, you could see trees down with all the stuff in it. And I needed to get gas, so I shot up to get gas. And here it is, just the morning after. And there is a line, like from here to the railroad tracks already. And this is just one place. So I'm sitting in that line, and here is the thing. Nobody thought about this. New Jersey people are so pushy, right? People are pulling up to the pump, filling up their car. And then they're opening the trunk and pulling out 5 or 6 cans. You know how long it takes to fill those cans? And and then they ran out of gas. I don't know, I was on the line for like 2 hours and they ran out of gas anyway. So the next day I went back up and they had the police. Here you are, you got the state police with the lights on. And they were making you go to 2 lines. If you wanted to fill gas cans, you went to those pumps. If you wanted to fill your car, you went to those pumps. That's just one little spot. So could you imagine all over the country scenarios like that? Suddenly fuel can't make it to the pumps on time. Yeah. Anyway, it's not the squeaky clean world we see today. Like it's going to be a much different. Everybody, hey, give me the phone. We'll let you get that one. Hey, you should say, everyone's staring at me. Stop it. All right, so mark of the beast. Now, I got to meddle a little bit here because what exactly the mark is again, millions of speculations. The best one I've seen, and to keep it simple, because there have been, I've got books on this, that would claim it's the Pope. And they claim it because in Latin, the term for the Pope is vicarius filii Dei. Those letters all have a numeric value. Guess what those happen to add up to? So that was one. Then you had Ronald Reagan. Ronald, 6 letters. Wilson, 6 letters. Reagan, 6 letters. He was one. I'm not kidding you. The best interpretation, and to keep it simple, I know of is, what day was man created on? 6. That's God's number of perfection is 7. Could be as simple as this. When you take a man times 3, it is a man trying to make himself God. That is the simplest, and missing all the other crazy speculations. I'm going to leave it there. 666 is like man trying to make himself God. I'm going to leave it at that. What it looks like, I don't know. And by the way, how many of you have ever gone to the store and your total is going hit 666 and you put something else on the yeah, a bunch of superstitious sissies. I'm not going to chance it. Could you imagine if you didn't and you walked out and you hear, "You've got the mark." Ah! But no, there's a lot of superstition with it. By the way, this is another interesting story. Getting into Bible manuscripts. Verse 18, it says, "Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, his number is 666. One of the oldest Bible manuscripts we have says the number is 616. There's more which says 666, but one of the older ones says 616. So while you're all looking over there for 616, he's going to sneak in that way. Or 666, he's sneaking in this way. But it is interesting. So all of you that have accepted a $6.16, you got the mark. Now, so what is not the mark? It's not the chip. Now, I got to pick on my Adventist friends. And I got friends. I'm just wondering, how many of you are aware of the fact that the Adventist denomination teaches emphatically, and a lot of the Adventists don't themselves believe this, but it is the official teaching of the denomination that worshiping today is the mark of the beast. This is right off their website. I took this straight down, and here I just took the title, Answers to Questions on the Mark of the Beast and the End Time Events, and here is their Executive Committee Adventist newsletter, and this was right out of the page, and it says, "Since neither Sabbath nor Sunday are specifically mentioned in the book of Revelation, how can the mark of the beast involve a day of worship or a law requiring the observance of Sunday?" Okay? So this is right out of the page. And it says, the mark of the beast is mentioned 7 times in Revelation, gives you all the numbers. 4 of these appear in its central vision, which is introduced by a view of the Ark of the Covenant. God's remnant people are identified as those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Immediately after this, John describes 2 beasts which persecute the church, a beast rising up out of the sea and another coming up out of the earth. The first beast commands false worship, and his persecuting activity resembles that of the little horn of Daniel 7 that would intend to change times in the law and persecutes God's people for 1,260 days. The connection with Daniel's prophecy shows that the false worship involves an attempt to change God's times and his 10 commandment law. Doesn't say the 10, just says law, doesn't say 10 commandment. And the one commandment of the 10 dealing with time is the 4th, to keep the Sabbath day holy. Historically, the attempt to change a day of worship has been perpetrated by the papacy of Rome. Stop right there. Is that true? Were Christians worshiping on Sunday prior to the Pope? Absolutely. You can find it, Book of Acts, chapter 20, early on Paul's preaching on the first day of the week. 1 Corinthians 16, when the collections are taken on the first day of the week. Acts chapter 15, when the Jerusalem Council meets to discuss what the Gentiles needed to do to be saved, right? They're looking at all these Jewish laws they had, because the Gentiles didn't naturally worship on Saturday. And there is not one mention of, and they also have to worship on Saturday. It just says they need to stay away from things strangled, from idols, and from sexual immorality. But this is what they believe, and it says the fact that the second beast in Revelation 13, representing the United States of America. Big interpretation there. The lamb with the 2 horns now is the United States of America. See, you got to catch this stuff. And exercise the same authority as the first beast and cooperates with the first beast to enforce false worship, shows that Sunday will be an important distinguishing mark of those who worship the beast and his image, in contrast to God's remnant people who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Their obedience includes keeping the 7th day holy because they heed the call to worship him who made the heaven and earth. Dudes and dames, we're damned, right? Because in Revelation 14, it says if you've got the mark, you're going to be tormented forever and ever. So just keep that in mind, that this is one of the, so if it's one of the doctrines out there, and it's taught emphatically, but most Adventists don't know this. So when we had that group that visited our Bible study, I've told you about that came to visit our Bible study. After about the third or fourth week, they came for 3 weeks in a row, and I knew what they were there for. I just looked at the leader and I said, look, you're welcome to keep coming. We love having you. But if you think any of us are converting to your position, you're mistaken. And I showed him that. Now, before I showed him that, I told him what they believed, and he denied it. And then I read it back to him. That was the last time they showed up. Wasn't trying to be mean, but doctrine is doctrine. Truth is truth. Yeah. Oh, that was the one thing he stood for. He stood up for her as being a prophetess. So we reject her as a prophet, and he came on and said otherwise. But it's one of those things that I think there are some saved Adventists that they just don't believe what their denomination believes. There's some saved Catholics that don't believe what their church believes. My whole point is, if you don't believe that stuff, that's a key doctrine right there. That's putting people in hell. Come to a place where you can learn some good stuff and avoid that. So I actually just highlighted I highlighted that last sentence right over here. The final test then is over true or false worship based either on obedience to God's law, including the Sabbath, or a man-made day to worship, Sunday. So, not the gospel I follow. All right. Where are we? Right on time. Thoughts or closing comments? Thoughts or closing comments? Roy, I wasn't looking specifically. But you know what? Since I made eye contact, he's ready. What? Hold it. Preface, crazy belief of Roy. Very possible. Very possible. All right. Hey, where's Dave? Erase that whole thing on the viruses, will you, when you put this up? It has nothing to do with this text. But it does go to show you, though, that there is a method. Never before in history, our history, has the whole world been united on one issue. That was it. And in Europe now, they're still messing around with this stuff with the passports. I got friends that live over there. And so it's going to be easier down the road to get people to unite against something that if they are absolutely brainwashed and convinced that it's a threat. So.
Moses not here, so I'm going to tell him how to get under your skin.
He's already, Moser's like the chip. I've already got it. Ain't no way to get him out of there. I was hoping he would be here today because I had some words for him this morning, and he didn't show up. But when it says that they marveled at Jesus, but did it mean anything to them? Because you can marvel at something and not be impressed. Well, we marvel at some of the things comes out of Moser's mouth on Thursday mornings. I ain't impressed. So, but he wasn't even here for it. I heard Michelle. No, that's right on. No, can you say that a little louder because it was worthy of hearing? Say it again. John MacArthur's church did not close during the entire time. Did not close the entire time. They didn't have any massive outbreaks and deaths. And MacArthur's position on it was the church is supposed to meet regardless of, that was MacArthur. The church meets. That's what Scripture says. And if you want to stay home, you stay home. But his church was fined $500 every Sunday through the entire thing, which they stuck into an escrow. At the end of the day, they won the lawsuit, and they kept it. And that's my example now. The government doesn't tell me when and how I can worship God, and that's my view on it. But if you want to stay, you stay home. But to tell others that they have to go with you, I don't know. Jesus would have stayed home. Jesus touched lepers with his bare hands. Okay, just remember that. Anyway, I'm not erase all this. Ron, because of your laughter, would you close in a word of prayer? Get me out of here before I get in trouble.